The opinions expressed within the content of this podcast are solely of our guests, and do not reflect the views and beliefs of WROK-FM Radio, and Body Slamming Conversations, its hosts or affiliates. Those under 18, we ask that you enter the podcast with an adult.
Welcome everybody to Kulls WW shows by WROK-FM Las Vegas and the great city of sin, sports entertainment, and gambling. Tracy's tonight's special guest is Mr. Steve Kulls. Let's go to Tracey.
Raven hair and ruby lips, sparks fly from.
Hi, Dave. Brandy? How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing tonight?
Apparently, I need a little more coffee. At any rate, that aside, yes, we're interviewing Mr. Steve Kulls tonight. He's been on the History Channel, the Discovery Channel, the National Geographic Channel, Quest TV. He is a Squatch detective. I know nothing about this, so I'm going to annoy him with just about every question I can come up with. He was also, at one point, I understand, a demon hunter. So interested in hearing what he saw, when, and what he did with everything. He has a new book out called The Psychology of Bigfoot, a guide to understanding Bigfoot claims. So with all that said, may I please have the honor of introducing Mr. Steve Kulls.
Hey, Tracey, Randy, how are you guys?
Good, sir. How are you?
I am marvelous.
Thank you so much for being on tonight. I'm just going to dive in if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Can you tell everybody watching here who doesn't know you just a basic background?
Well, I am a former private investigator. Started my investigation career in 1988. Trained forensic interviewer. Have a lot of background in basically the psychology of interviewing, neurolinguistics, body language interpretation. As well as a minor background in forensic evidence collection, I've been using investigation principles all my life throughout my career. So, in 1998, a friend of mine came out, said, "Hey, have you read this book?" And it was a book about Bigfoot sightings, literally in my own backyard, only about an hour and a half away at the time.
Okay.
And I said, I bet you this is a bunch of baloney. I bet you if I start investigating, I'm going to find the stories are going to break down and it's going to.
Right.
And in actuality, I found out quite the opposite. I ended up talking to a lot of the folks in the book, meeting police officers who had encounters, meeting firefighters who had encounters, meeting scientists who had encounters.
Okay.
And I'm running them through my forensic interviews and watching their physical reactions, listening to their neurolinguistics, see how they're saying things. And it all passed muster. So they saw something. So I ended up getting involved in research, ended up having an opportunity between 2006 and 2008. I ended up going to 46 of the 50 states. In 2008, I started my TV career where they started throwing me on programs like Monster Quest, America's Book of Secrets, the Truth Behind series. So I ended up getting exposure on that. Actually, in 2011, got sent to Loch Ness on a divergent to look for the Loch Ness Monster and leading a crew out there, a team of divers and some acoustic engineering biologists. And, so it was a great time there. And in 2011, I had my first sighting, and in 2012, I had my second sighting, and that's all I've had so far. I believe I've had quite a few close encounters. I've had rocks thrown at me. I've had, hearing things that I can't explain, and I'm quite the outdoorsman now. When I started this, I made it a fact to become a tracker, or made it a point rather to become a tracker, to understand how to read the forest and signs in the forest. And okay, that's bear, that's deer, that's a critter, that's so you end up doing a lot of different self-teaching, because in this mystery there's so much. There's anthropology, sociology, biology, psychology, like I said, ecology, zoology, and that all of these sciences, forensics,
Right.
they all apply in some venue in this mystery. So, and of course, my forte is the criminal psychology, forensic interviewing point. But I also do forensic evidence, and I look at, what's on the ground. So I tried to become a really well-rounded individual in the subject. And the other thing is that you have to become a historian. To know the mystery is to look at the mystery. And I've done some deep dives going back as far as 100 years ago on some of these different cases and stuff. And there were, in one particular one of my favorite highlights of my career was in 1976. I want to say there was this book that came out written by a pseudonym under the name of Jan Clement. It was called The Creature, and it was about this guy's interactions in Pennsylvania near the Chestnut Ridge that he was having with the Bigfoot. And so I investigated 40 years later, who is Jan Clement? Is this book for real? And as it turned out, I ended up finding out who Jan Clement really was, and finding out that it was actually a piece of fiction. So very
Oh, okay.
smartly written,
Okay.
but definitely, and then so literally I solved the 45-year-old mystery at that point in time.
Cool. Let's get something very important on the table here. Your book, The Psychology of Bigfoot,
Yes.
a Guide to Understanding Bigfoot Claims. Can you tell us about that, and also, and much more importantly, where to get it?
Sure. Well, it can be found on Amazon, and
Okay.
you can go to my website at squatchdetective.com, or you can go to any one of my videos. It's in the video descriptions. In one of the later videos, I should say, in the last month or so, you go in the video descriptions. It's in there too, and that'll take you to a link to Amazon to purchase the book.
Okay.
But what it's about is looking at the reasons. Not so much the psychology of the creature itself, but the psychology of people behind it. I do go into a little bit of the primate behavior module, which is actually
Okay.
a book I had written years ago, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. I wrote a book called What Would Sasquatch Do? And I talk about how primates live and some of their behaviors within those habitats. But the psychology of Bigfoot talks a lot about things like, well, how a truthful person talks, the reasonings why people have some of these far out theories on Bigfoot, um, why people that are not qualified for certain things will insist in face of all the evidence in front of them, why they would
Right.
deny that, um, as well as a general guide of saying, hey, if this is real, this is what's not, why people hoax, why they don't, so it's a whole gambit of different using psychology, using psychological terms, and some of the
Right.
the
Right.
laws behind it, such as the Dunning-Kruger effect, just to name one.
See, you have that. I'm an empath. So when I come in, I literally read the room, and I know
Right,
when somebody is full of shenanigans or if they're being honest.
right.
So, see, we
And,
have something in common.
and truthfully, um, you end up uh, eh, eh, you end up becoming really good at reading people,
Mhm.
regardless of what abilities you may have or what
Yeah,
abilities you
yeah,
may
yeah.
not have. It's all practice. And
Right.
over the course of my career, I've probably interviewed about 3,000 criminals
Ooh.
in arrests that I made. I've made almost 3,000 arrests in my career. Um, and I probably cold interviewed somebody for confessions probably about 300 to 400 times, where I was sitting
Oh
down,
my
I have
goodness.
some evidence in front of them, and now I'm talking to them to elicit a confession out of them or an admission of them.
Gotcha.
And I probably have like a 90 to 95% success rate in that, I would say, because more often than not, I would come out with somebody admitting that they stole something or they did something wrong, and we
Right.
would move on.
Well, I have to remember to mind my P's and Q's around you. So tell me, what was the absolute beginning? I know we went in to talk about it a little bit earlier, but your first initial, oh my God, I got to do this and be a Squatch detective. Was there an incident? Was there?
Well,
No.
it's well, like I said, that book. I love a
Okay.
good mystery. I was interested in the topic as a young
Okay.
lad. But as I became a teenager, cars and girls became a lot more important than any of this other mystery crap.
Right.
And then years later, I was reminded of it. So I said, now I'm an adult. I'm a realist. I've been an investigator for at that point 10 years. I'm like, well, I bet you this is a lot of bunch of hooey. And I get into it, and because my cynical side starts to take over a bit. And boy, was I surprised. And like I said, I love a good mystery. It's not like Bigfoot's the only thing I look at, but it's my forte. But I still
Okay.
love, a lot of unsolved crimes and like looking through those and, missing persons and all that other stuff, the real world stuff as well. So there's
Right.
what I call the real world. Maybe I should say more mainstream stuff like true
Yeah.
crime and like,
Oh, I
and
understand. I
right,
understand. What I do isn't really mainstream, so I completely get that.
right.
What do you do for the people besides, say smile and have a nice day, who tell you're full of stuff when it comes to all this and that nothing is real and yada yada?
Well, the people that usually say that are keyboard warriors.
Wow, okay.
Right. Right. They're the keyboard warriors, the trolls. And people. And the funny thing is, people a lot of times don't even have the patience to listen to something. And a great example is we did a great debate last night on the Osman Albert Osman affair, where he alleges 100 years ago to get kidnapped by a Bigfoot, and it went back and forth. Well, I had one person that unsubbed because this is about Albert Osman, unsubbed. Like you're not even listening to it. So and you got to listen to the material, and that's so important. I think in today's society, we live in such a drive-by society. Like if you're not getting that information in 3 seconds, they're not interested. Well, if that's the case, then my channel's not for them, because we deep dive stuff. We look into this stuff, and we try to look at it from all the angles that we can. And if people find that boring, okay, fine, have a nice day. But if people really want to enthrall themselves
Right.
in history, which is what I love to do, and my audience, my normal subscribers love to do, and my audience that's been with me for years, they love doing stuff like that because that's the investigator in me. I like deep diving. I don't like going by real quick and just saying XYZ, because then you can't put all the receipts out there. And to prove or disprove something, you got to bring the receipts. You got to bring the
Right.
proof. And
Oh, I
I've
understand. I
I've been
understand.
criticized in the past for taking my time calling somebody a hoaxer because I didn't have the proof at that time. But
Right.
I had no problem once getting the proof calling them a hoaxer. Right. So
Yeah.
there's a number of different things. And I run an investigation on a case by case basis. Just because I believe in Bigfoot exists, I have to take my bias out of that. And I treat each
Okay.
case individually. Okay, is this a Bigfoot or is it not? We try to debunk it. We try to look at it from all, like I said, looking at it from all angles. Even sometimes going down the rabbit hole just to see if anything feathers out. When you've exhausted all those options, then you're left with what you have, and that will determine whether or not this is a misidentification, uh, a case of, hey, this could potentially be a Bigfoot, or finally it could be a hoax. So you have to look at it, or it could be a psychological hoax. And because there's a lot of
Right.
reasons why people hoax, and believe it or not, money is not the number one reason why. A
I
lot of
would
people think,
imagine they want the attention.
well, that's very true, but why do they want the attention? And people
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
automatically they go right to that money train, and that's actually the smallest one, because there's really not a hell of a lot of money in this field, right?
Right.
Um, And you as you know, being on the paranormal side can probably attest to that. That money
Oh,
goes to a
absolutely.
very few people. And unfortunately,
Absolutely.
and I've seen it happen in the paranormal. I've seen it happen in ufology. I've seen it happen in the cryptid world too. Is you
Mhm.
have a certain class that'll try to juxtapose themselves to try to,
Right.
oh, I want my own TV show so bad
Right. Right.
that's you know, I don't want a TV. I don't mind being on documentaries. If I had a
Mhm.
TV show, it would be the most boring thing in the world because I'm not about the BS. I'm not about leaving a hook at
Right.
the end of each episode because that's what an
Right.
episodic TV show does. I would rather be in
Right.
a documentary where, you know, they come up to some conclusions, whatever they are at the end of the show, and I get to put my true self out
Cool. Do you find that there's a bigger concentration at certain parts of the country? Like, are they more heavily populated, say, on the
there. Yeah,
East Coast or the West Coast or up north?
absolutely. And if you look at it, it seems like most of the heaviest concentrations are in the Pacific Northwest, right? But they are in, from what my understanding is, they're in the 49 of the 50 states. The exception, there's no real credible ones in Hawaii. And that would make sense because
Right.
Hawaii is a volcanic island that just sprouted up out of nowhere. Whereas, you know, North America at one time was squished together with
Right.
Asia, at least the
Right.
west part of the coast. And if you look at the disbursement of the Aboriginal Homo sapiens that came over when there was a land bridge there. The
Right.
same thing with the animals, saber-toothed tigers and other the mastodons. Um, you know, they kind of filtered through as well.
Okay.
But the amazing thing is, and people have to realize that, you know, in 1898 they found a 98% complete mastodont skeleton,
Wow.
not 20 miles from where I live.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, the disbursement of animals is really bizarre. And they found it near an area where the Mohawk River is very close, where it meets the Hudson River. And they were actually building mills at the time, and they were building mills, and in their digging, they discovered this mastodont skeleton.
Okay.
It may have fallen off the falls because nearby there's a falls that's in Cohoes, New York. Um, but there it was, and it sits in the New York Museum to this day. So,
Okay.
you know, that's why you have saber-toothed tigers in South America. That's where they found those. Well, they came from Asia. They came right over.
Gotcha.
So there is, you know, a disbursement. But if you look at Bigfoot sightings in North America, the first one that was actually reported in a newspaper was actually in New York State, Sackett's Harbor, New York. And that was
Okay.
reported in 1818. It was described as a reddish
Wow.
brown wild man. So you have stories like that have propagated. And a lot of the stories that appeared in newspapers actually propagated on the East Coast because at the time, the East Coast was
Okay.
more populated than the West
Right.
Coast.
Right. Okay. Now, obviously, you see these shows out there and they're talking about the lizard man, the this man, or that man. Do you believe that there are other things out there like that?
Doubtful.
Or is that
Very
okay?
doubtful. Very doubtful. If you think about it, the lizard man, for example, I investigated Bishopville, South Carolina. That's the home of the
Okay.
lizard man. And that started in 1981 with a gentleman apparently saying something attacked his car and something ripped up his car. And he had gotten a glimpse of something that was hair covered. That was hair covered. His description was that of a Sasquatch / Bigfoot.
Okay.
But what he
Okay.
said you know, he saw the palms of the hands as it was walking away. And somebody asked him, what did they look like? He goes, they looked very leather-like, almost lizard-like. And that's how the lizard man got
Ah.
named.
Okay.
Right. So that
Okay.
spun that phony legend. The sheriff at the time was a sheriff by the name of Liston Truesdale. I almost said Tristan Loosdale, but his name was Liston Truesdale. Um, uh, And he had casted these prints, and I got a chance in 2007, 2008, 2008. I got a chance to look at those prints in February. And they were obviously fake. And
Okay.
because there's a reason why when we look at tracks of any type of animal, if they have toes, there should be different toe splays on them. Stampers always have the same width, and they did. And you can actually see some dowel markings in the tracks. So, and unfortunately, he thought they were real. I mean, and I understand you get excited, you get in. So when you find your own evidence, people get so excited that they become biased right off the shoot a lot of times, even police officers, even investigators. So that's why sometimes you have to keep yourself in check. But anyway, as it turned out, the reason why I was there was because in 2008 or late 2007, there was the Rawson family there that claimed that perhaps the lizard man went after their van. And I actually have a piece of the van somewhere in my collection over here with blood still on it, actually, where something had chewed up their van. Now, the first thing I did was try to get in there and say, well, number one, is this a hoax? And as I'm going in there, I could see teeth marks on the top, and I'm feeling on the bottom. And there is a mandible that's reaching under there because I looked underneath. There's mandible mark. Okay, so these aren't machine tools; these are actually bite marks.
Right.
Automatically, primate teeth are generally squarish, right?
Okay.
And what I'm seeing are round teeth, and round teeth means canine. Right. Now, why would a canine go after this vehicle? And the one thing a lot of people know is the Rawsons had a ton of cats, tons. And they they didn't have like one of those little cat gyms or something like a little cat hotel. They had a cat condominium there. It was like 5 feet long, and there probably had to be 15, 20 cats all just hanging around.
Well, I've got 10. I understand.
So I'm like, okay, let's pop the hood. I popped the hood of this minivan, and in the header bolts where the engine block was, there was cat hair.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was, as I'm looking at this, okay, I know what's going on here. There's canine teeth. There's blood because it probably cut its gums while trying to chew through the thing. This dog went after one of these cats. The cats went up into the engine block to hide.
Okay.
Sure enough, the Department of the game wardens DNA tested the blood on the car, and it turned out
I was going to ask you if
it was canine.
Was
it was canine.
Okay.
And about a year and a half, 2 years later, there was actually a police officer who released this video, or one of the police of this dog going after a car after one of their police cruisers actually pulled the bumper off it, and so it happens. So we the good and bad is that no, the Dawsons weren't faking anything, but two, it wasn't a lizard man, it was a dog.
Yeah, I see these things, like I said, the lizard man and the pig man and the wolf boy, or what have you, and like this has just got to be made up. I can see some truth in. Now, what is the difference between a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch?
None. They're just colloquial terms.
Oh, tomato.
Yeah. In fact, what happened was they were originally called Sasquatch, and there was a big debate the other day on the Osmond channel. And as it turned out, I actually got the source article. A lot of people want to say that in 1929, J.W. Burns coined the term Sasquatch off one of the tribe's names. In actuality, as we did a little more digging this morning, the term was Sasquatch, right?
Okay.
SAQ''ET or S, something similar to that. And again, the spelling could be kind of iffy because, again, we're converting Native American language to that. Sasquatch.
Right.
So Sasquatch easily could be misinterpreted or misheard as Sasquatch. Right.
Okay.
So he was actually quoted. He didn't actually make that term up. He was quoting a First Nations Indian relaying his encounter. And he was saying that there is these people known as the Sasquatch. And he probably said Sasquatch. But because you don't know how many times I've talked to people and they come up to me and go, is Sasquatch real? It's number one, it's not a Sasquatch.
Yes, I love that. Sasquatch.
Right? Sasquatch, like it's a
squash.
Like
you can grow them in your garden.
Right, exactly. So when you run into that, and unless you've had that experience of talking to probably a good 1,000 people over the course of my 25
Right.
years doing this about that. Every once in a while,
Okay.
I'll get the person that'll call it Sasquatch. And it's like,
That's
no.
funny.
So it was very understandable why somebody would think Sasquatch would be Sasquatch. Not very far. But he didn't really coin the term. He was actually taking it as a quote. So that meant that the term was in existence prior to 1929, but it may have been called Sasquatch and people were thinking that, or maybe some people thought it was Sasquatch. But anyway, but in 1958, there was a logging project going on near Bluff Creek. And the loggers there were seeing a lot of footprints, and their 50-gallon drums were being disturbed and stuff like that, these giant footprints. So a bulldozer operator by the name of Jerry Crew ended up casting, went to a gentleman by the name of Bob Titmus, who kind of taught him how to cast things. May have been Bob Titmus, may have been somebody else now I'm thinking about it, but he went to a guy and kind of showed him how to make a plaster cast. So he went out there and he made plaster casts of these tracks, and one of them made the newspaper. And the headline was, "There's a new kind of Sasquatch. It's called Bigfoot." And that's how the Bigfoot term, the Bigfoot name is actually a coined term.
Okay. Now, is Bigfoot Sasquatches?
Sasquatches. No.
Sasquatches. Are they related to the Yeti?
Well, one would think. I mean, we're all describing an upright, hairy, bipedal creature that can have varying hair color from white to gray to blue. And what I mean by blue is I mean like a blue-haired person, like an older person would have. To red, to reddish brown, to sandy, to blonde, to brown, to black. Very diverse, like our own hair colors as Homo sapiens. Again, dimorphically a little bit different. The Yeti is a little shorter. So is the skunk ape, by that matter. But then
I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
Right. Then again, that's just a rule, and I forget the name of the rule off the top of my head, but that's just a natural occurrence that happens. If you think about Homo sapiens, we have people that are 6'8". We have people that are, hell, I have two sons, one's 6'1", one's 6 foot. I'm 5'9.5". Right. So that happens. I think I just fed my kids too much, but in reality, people are Homo sapiens diverse, primates are diverse, and so it kind of falls in line with everything else. That we're probably looking at the same type of creature, just a little diversity going on.
Okay.
Hey guys, we got to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back with more questions for Steve Kulls. And if you have anything you want to say or ask, put it in the chat room for all my radio fans listening around the world. That's right. That's Mr. Steve Kulls, the pet detective, as I call him. He's my buddy, so I can say that. But he's an awesome man. You guys need to check out his book. His new book is out, and I will air that back up here in a little bit for you guys. And he'll talk about it again. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right straight back.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm excited to announce my new product, My Coffee. I get products all the time from entrepreneurs for my new platform, mystore.com. And when I tried My Coffee for the first time, I was blown away. It is the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I spent the last 4 months doing my due diligence, and this family-owned business micromanages every step from the fields to the cup to ensure the best quality coffee you're ever going to have. It starts with the beans that are grown in Honduras. Honduras's volcanic soil and humid climate make the perfect growing conditions for coffee plants, which produce the best beans ever. Then each batch is tested for its aroma, taste, and other aspects to meet the highest standards in the coffee industry. And after that, it goes into production, which is all done right here in the USA. It's like you're getting that small batch specialty coffee, but delivered right to your front door. So go to mystore.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code and you'll get your very own My Coffee for 25% off. You guys all know that I've traveled the country for the past year and a half. I've stayed in hundreds of hotels. I've tried every coffee out there. Well, some of the coffees have that terrible aftertaste, some that leave me jittery, or I get an upset stomach. Well, my coffee is different. It's the richest, smoothest, best coffee I've ever had. My coffee comes in a variety of flavors. You get them ground or whole bean. Plus, it's certified organic and non-GMO. I guarantee it'll be the best coffee you've ever had. So go to mystore.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code and you'll get my coffee for 25% off. And I'm going to give you deep discounts on all my store products. That's mystore.com. It's my new platform for USA entrepreneurs. Please order now.
Okay, we're back with Steve Kulls. Going to talk a little bit more about his book, The Psychology of Bigfoot.
I have a very interesting dilemma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A commercial. We just saw a great commercial for my coffee, right? How does he expect people to use his pillows if they're drinking too much coffee?
I asked the same thing, Steve. I asked the same thing.
All right. Looky here, Steve. I'm new at this. Don't be doing that. I thought, oh my Lord, what did I do? I know I didn't push a button and I have button issues. So, anywho, do you find that people report more male or female big Sasquatch? Or
more male. And the reason being is actually the last time I really had a female sighting was quite a while ago. And again, that may be because they're getting, as a good friend of a witness that I knew down in Pennsylvania, a great guy. He said that a lot of people just see the business end walking away. So they're seeing the business end of the Sasquatch. Like I said, they see the southern side of a northbound Sasquatch. So a lot of times see them hauling off or moving off. Years ago, there was a couple of 12-year-old kids that had a sighting up very near me. Again, in my primary area I researched was up near Whitehall, New York. And this wasn't too far off of the infamous A-Bear Road sightings that were always prevalent up there. And we separated the two boys, and I talked to one of them, and one of my old mentors, Bill Brand, and I talked to the other one. Okay. And one of the questions we always like to say, what was the most prominent feature on the Sasquatch that you'd seen? And the funny thing is both these kids said, well, boobies. And they said that separately.
Right.
And, so yeah,
that had to be a sight.
I was like, we were like, wow, that it's coincidences and stuff like that. That like my job as an investigator is not to prove scientifically that Bigfoot exists. That's for science. My job is to collect as much data and evidence I can, give it to science, and let them figure it out. So my whole goal here is really to see if investigation-wise, does it make sense from an investigation standpoint? And when you have corroborating witnesses like that, specifically speaking about a particular body term and being quite embarrassed that like, well, I didn't want, they were, the one kid I talked to didn't want to say it first. I'm like, come on, you can tell me. And, because he was quite embarrassed to be talking to an adult about a female body part. And at age 12, when you're at that midpoint of it,
that awkward age,
cusping into adolescence. It was quite revealing. Like I walked out and I go, did you get the same answer? And he's like, yeah, if you're talking about what I'm talking about, yes, we did. And we were like, wow.
Now, has a body ever been located or taken in for study, or parts of, or hair or anything like that?
Well, there's been some hair samples. One of my other mentors, Paul Bartholomew, is in possession of Dr. Warren Cook's urine hair. Now, the urine is the Chinese version of what they describe as a Sasquatch. And if you think about it, so there is some hair samples. I know years ago, Dr. Wolf Henner Fahrenbach had gotten some hairs that tested positive for being primate at the time, but lacked medulla for a DNA analysis. And they came out tentatively as primate. He has since retired from the field for quite some time, but and retired to Texas. He was actually out in Oregon. But yeah, this is a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, they have the Yeti in Nepal and the Himalayas, as we're aware of. But
Right.
then you have a smaller version called the orang pendek in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, those kind of areas. Then you have the Yeren that's
Okay.
in China, the Yowie in Australia, or the Yahoo. Sometimes they call it the Yahoo. The Almas in Russia, or the Almasti, sometimes they call it that particular name. The Mapinguari in South America and in Central America. So there's
Oh,
a number of different names and colloquial names for something that's an upright, apparently upright hairy biped.
okay.
More
So when
interesting.
you're out and about and you're hunting and you're researching, have you ever been frightened by these creatures?
Well, I'm more frightened of a bear or a moose, particularly a moose
Okay.
in the field, because a moose has got the brain the size of a walnut, whereas at least a bear will figure out, well, maybe I shouldn't tangle with this person most of the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
But a moose is like, no, I'm going to go after him.
Okay. Okay. Makes
But
sense.
yeah, yeah, so yeah, because in reality, primates of one species rarely attack primates of another species. There are some cultural differences because some chimpanzees will eat monkeys and will go after other primates. And
Oh,
you find, the it turns out bonobos will do that. Bonobos will actually pack hunt and do something like that. But again, we do have some cultural people that will eat monkey brains, and but think about it. Most of us are like, ugh, who wants to eat a
mm-hmm.
monkey? Yuck. And think about how we feel about seeing a poached gorilla on TV, right?
Right.
That's part
Right.
of our That's really part of our primate instinct. And there's been
Okay.
studies where macaques of one species will allow macaques of another species to tromp on through their territory, although they'll make one hell of a display, but they won't attack them. But if they're the same
Mm.
species, they consider that a warlike act and they will attack them. So,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
why if
Um,
you think about it, us Homo sapiens, we're horrible to one another, aren't we?
yeah, we are.
We're kinder to our animals than we are to ourselves.
Absolutely. I've heard a lot about portals and Bigfoot, about that's how they go back and forth. I know nothing about it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's nonsense.
Okay.
I'll straight right out front. It's
Okay.
nonsense.
Okay.
Um, we're looking at something that doesn't use fire, that
Right.
is never seen using a handmade tool, using simple
Right.
tools, sticks, rocks, maybe perhaps logs. We never see it, using a like a fashion tool. Like I said, doesn't use fire, and it's naked. With something
Okay.
intelligent, walk around the woods with fleas, mosquitoes, chiggers,
Mm.
ticks, leeches, black flies, and a whole other assortment of parasites and parasitic
Oh,
elements. Where they walk around naked in the woods. And the other thing too is they're odoriferous. Is again that in about 10% of the cases, people smell a really rotten type of smell associated with them.
mhm.
So it's not to me. It doesn't sound like this is a super intelligent creature. Mind you, they are intelligent. They are
Right. Right.
because they have a primate brain, so they're good for abstract thought. They can problem solve, which
Okay.
chimpanzees, orangs, gorillas, they all can do that. So they have abstract thought, and so they're smart and they're very attuned to their environment, which we plop ourselves into it, and we're not. Let's face it, we don't live in the forest 24/7. If we did,
Right.
we would be very attuned to that environment as well, probably just
Right.
as
Right.
good as a Sasquatch, like the Aboriginal Native Americans were. They knew their forest very well, like the back of their hands. They
Right.
could hear
Right.
things. They could put their ears to the ground. They could use that environment to their advantage. We've lost that because of modernization a bit. We're not in the woods,
Right.
so
Right.
it's not a big surprise. People think they're smarter than us. They're not. They're just acclimated much better to their environment. We're in their environment when we go to the forests.
Okay. Do they travel just by themselves in families or perhaps in packs?
Well, nothing like a pack of wild Sasquatches. Anyway, if we look at traditional primate groupings, they travel in troops or family units, but they tend to each, especially the males, tend to wander every day. And they have what they call a home range. So some will wander. Gorillas like have an 8-kilometer type of ranging area. They'll wander around for about 8 kilometers within where their actual territory is. And out of that home range, they'll find different what we call foci of activity areas where they eat, rest, play, mate, all that fun stuff. And their behaviors are different than in all of their areas. So you have that, and then of course you have the structure. If you have conflict within that family troop, you may see a male wander off to create his own troop or find a mate or to leave that troop because he has been forced out of that troop due to the alpha male. Because there will always be an alpha male in any of those troops.
Okay. I see we have a question from, and please forgive me if I mispronounce this, Helton, aka Masterman. What do you think of the stories of them trading with Indians?
I think there may be some misinterpretation there. Trading, of the word trading itself. There may be a misinterpretation of the word what trading actually means. It may not mean like the French traded with the Native Americans up here in the Northeast, where they would come in with a bunch of pelts, and the Native Americans would give them, and vice versa. It may have been where they may have left some stuff, and they would leave stuff in return, and they would call that trading, or maybe they misidentify that. Maybe we've misidentified what they really meant, and that it wasn't really a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot that was actually trading with them, but another kind of like a remote kind of tribe that's a little bit. But if you think about it, people say, well, I think they're just us, just in a feral form. They're not the same as us. They can't be. Their foot structure is different. And because they have a different foot structure, having a mid-tarsal break as opposed to an arch and a ball of the foot, because they have a lack of a neck, and their neck tends to go up like a gorilla almost. Some not has a crest. They're most likely they have a tapetum lucidum, which is the reflective part of the eye, because people see eye shine all the time, or some of the time in some of the sightings. All of those are differences in DNA structure. So they can't be a Homo sapien because they have those features. They would be, at very best, they may be a different type of Homo sapien at the very best. But considering they have some pongid features and they have some hominid features, it may be something completely different. So where that falls, I don't know. But we do know one thing. They're primate, which is articulate hands and feet, large brain, forward-seeing eyes. And again, the most important thing, a large brain capacity. So.
Okay. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to type it in for us, and we'll do the best we can to answer it.
And I see Helton said the first reports of gifting, maybe, and exactly, I agree.
Okay.
That could be.
I'd like to ask you briefly about your stint as a demon hunter.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
Well, in 2010, I started getting involved with some, and the paranormal interested me too. And again, same kind of thing. I want to see if this is real. And I was getting a lot of interesting things. And I noticed the group I was with started seeing some, and I don't like talking about this much because it always brings bad luck.
Phrase it however you want.
But I'll briefly say that I got involved with that because there were cases which appeared to be demonic.
Okay.
And these groups would leave people, they would leave them hanging.
Right.
So I wanted to, being what I am as, an investigator, I don't want to leave people hanging. I want to help them through this. I want to see it through with them. Right. So I started becoming a demonologist. I started studying a lot of the material about that, and et cetera, et cetera. And I will say I've had some pretty earth-shattering experiences and stuff I can't explain. but because it's not work I do for pride, I really don't
Right.
talk about it all that much. I've talked about it occasionally. I mean, I've been through some really nasty ones, and the last one really, I said, that's enough. And if people
Right.
don't think that there's a residual from it, there is, and
Yes, there
that's
is.
why I leave it as it is.
Okay. Well, I don't want to make you uncomfortable talking about it. We'll go back to Bigfoot, but thank you. I was just curious. I heard little birdie told me about that. I thought,
Yep.
well, you are talking to a paranormal white witch. I forgot to ask him about it.
Hey, Steve, we got a question from Nova Scotia, Canada. Her
All
name is
right.
French Annie. She says the Yetis are all pure white. In Nova Scotia, Canada, there's 2 or 3 different colored Bigfoot. Is that because of the change of weather, like animals, like rabbits change from dark to light in winter and summer months? Is that the same for Bigfoot?
Well, the truth is that not all Yetis are white. There's been reports of darker ones as well. That again is a myth that all Yetis are white. They're not all white. In fact, a lot of them are described as sandy brown or blondish. But no one would think that they don't really change hair color because we don't. They may change from like a reddish brown or a black to gray as they get older, kind of like a gorilla would. If you think about it, when gorillas are born, they're pretty much jet black, and then you have some that get older and they start getting grayer. Or there may be some amount of sun bleaching if they're laying out in the sun like any other animal. And you got to understand that the reason why other animals do that is because they have fur. Sasquatch does not have fur; they have hair. So primate has hair, whereas there's not like multiple coats. If you ever shave a dog and it's like they're fuzzy, you shave a Sasquatch, you get skin, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. So that's the big difference between.
Do you have any investigations coming up that you can talk about?
Well, I just got done with an investigation I did in southern Albany County, New York, which is a lot of people think Albany County. Yes, there is a big population center in Albany County, but there is most of New York is rural. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
a lot of farms in southern Albany County, a lot of mountain ranges. We have the Helderbergs, and you have there's one park out there, Thatcher Park, which is a huge that you can actually get on. When you get into the park, you can actually see all of Albany off in the distance, and you can actually see the curvature of the earth. It's that high up and that naked to the eye. But there was a sighting in the Helderbergs, which is actually, if you think about it, there's the Helderberg Mountains, the Catskill Mountains, and then the Catskill Mountains. So it's all part of that mountain range. And then once you get through the Catskills, then you get into the Appalachians, and that's even further south after a brief. But yes, there was a sighting about a month ago in the Helderbergs. We're going to be reinvestigating that. We went out once. We did collect a potential DNA sample, although not too sure. We'll see. We'll get that out to Dr. Darby Orcutt out in the University of North Carolina, who has a great DNA project going on. But kid was releasing. He was a rehabber with his mom. They released some possums into the wild. He decided he wanted to go looking for some mushrooms, which is not uncommon this time of year.
Okay.
And he happened to come across a Bigfoot type creature. The creature took off. We came down. We were actually at the sighting within 80 hours of the sighting, so pretty recent. Found a piece of glass in the stream where it was near, and had some kind of reddish, rustic type of substance on it, which could potentially be some blood evidence. We'll see, because it was really weird how it was sitting in the creek, and it was actually sitting shard end up, which they could have stepped on it.
So it was sitting there waiting for you.
We were waiting for somebody. So we collected that. I went back a couple of days later, and while we were going down there doing a little video explaining what it was and doing a little night surveillance, when we walked in, something large took off. I sure couldn't see it. It was just at a range in the pine section of the forest, but it was like one of the largest pops I heard, like something stepped on a log and the log snapped in half. It was like very,
wow.
very bass type of sound, low frequency, but high decibel. Right.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it was like, wow, I don't know what that was, but it didn't tromp off like a moose or a bear would.
Right.
So, it is what it is. I mean, was it Bigfoot? I don't know. I can't say that 100% for sure, but
Sure.
definitely interesting
Sure.
stuff. And then eventually later on in the night, we had walked to a different part of the park, and we actually got a deer snort, which was kind of cool. And we actually got a
they
barred.
snorted.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was like, just all of a sudden I hear just like little rustle in the woods, and I hear, I'm like, oh, that's a deer. That's a buck snorting. And a little while later, we heard a barred owl, and then all of a sudden, out of the barred owl, there was another section. There was a great horned owl hooting, and we could hear the great horned owl hooting and the barred owl hooting. And of course, I was out there teasing both of them,
Right.
and getting them to revocalize because ooh, 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 and I was giving it back to them, and they were chattering back. And then all of a sudden, you'd hear the great horned owl, ooh, 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 ooh. Like, yeah, okay. So it was a lot of fun, and it's fun having a bad day squatching is a good day in the woods, and I'm not a hunter by trade. I could never find myself to have that ability to kill another creature, unless absolutely it's threatening me, right?
Right, of course.
Like if there's a wasp in the house, I got no problem. But I could never look into an eye of another mammal and see that connection. It's not for me. But I love being out in nature. I love recording sounds. I love taking pictures. I love just being out there and hearing them interact and having a flare, which I have a thermal binocular. I like watching them doing their own thing in their own space and kind of unobtrusively. I've my own property. I have a couple of trail cameras. Got some wonderful grabs of different animals, and that's all part of the love of this. Is like Sasquatch pretty cool, but there's so many other cool things to see out in the woods. So.
What would you suggest for somebody like me? Say I wake up tomorrow, I was like, I want to go and see for myself. So for a first timer, what are your suggestions to do and not do?
Well, number one, always be safe. Know where you're going. Know what kind of animals are out there. Know what kind of bugs are out there. Know what kind of plant life is out there. Because you don't want to go tromping through poison oak. You want to dress right. You want to make sure you wear some long socks, boots, pants. There's people that'll go out there in flip flops and stuff. That's crazy, but them. But always take care of your legs up. If there's snakes in the area, you might want to wear leggings or snake leggings.
No, I'm done. No snakes.
Because guess what? You'll come across snakes no matter where you are. No matter where you are.
No.
So you want to do that. Make sure you have a compass, a manual compass, because that way, and when you go into the woods, always make sure you look, okay, I'm heading north when I'm going into the woods. And you do that because if you go south, you'll eventually hit the road.
Okay.
If you get lost, you can find yourself, as long as I keep heading south, I know I'm heading towards the road.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you have maps of the area. Yes, Randy.
Can we roll some footage of you live in the field?
I suppose.
All right, we're going to go for that right now.
This was standing right to the right of the telephone pole.
Okay.
And it was standing literally, I'm going to put the bottom edge of the beam, how tall it was off the ground, about there. And I could see the eyes, and then it just turned around. I could just see it move back, and then it turned around up again in there, looking back down this way, and then it turned around again and proceeded.
Yeah, you're never going to cut them off. You're never going to cut them off, Steve. So.
You have Amy and Stacy at the fire. All right, send them on out. I'm going to post them due north of our location.
Seeing if we see any imprints here.
We're on our way up. Amy or Stacy, do you have a radio? Yeah, we're on our way out.
Yeah, you said it crossed straight across, so. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Unless right there.
Okay, team one up there.
Look at
that.
OP1.
Look at that.
Make sure your lights are out. No white light, no red light, no nothing. Just go dark.
Right here.
That looks.
Roger, I'm OP1.
Right here's a ledge where you just get
Affirmative.
walked up, you guys.
Roger that. We're looking for sign right now, and I think we might have
You could have just walked right up here though. 'cause there's rocks.
seen a scrape here, but I'm not
Unless
sure.
that's a print. Print one has to look for
Roger that. Let's just hunker down and look,
That looks
listen, and
fresh.
feel.
Yeah, it does.
And
Looks like it just fell.
show your lights. We're going to try something.
Interesting.
Yep, and that's from my. Somebody asked, I think, is that from Bigfoot Exists? No, that's actually from my own collection.
Okay. Okay.
That's never. I may have aired briefly on one of my specials, but only a very quick snippet of that. And what you're seeing there is actually me having my first encounter where I went out to my car to get some batteries. And I shined my light around after I was having a cigarette, shined my light around. And there was one standing next to, very nearby a utility pole, actually standing next to it, I should say.
Oh my goodness.
That is on the dirt road near our campsite.
Okay.
Again, this is my research area number 1. So I've been, at that point in time, I've been going up there about 12 years, 11 years, 12 years.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't your first time thing.
Right. I know that area like the back of my hand. And now that was 12 years ago. So, and we still to this day have activity that happens up there. And just recently we had this magnificent hoot vocalization that we were all standing there going, wow. And we got one of the Christmas recordings of it, which was awesome too, because I had a filmmaker up there with me. And so and what they're looking at there is where they believed it stepped into the forest, because that's right where it had walked into the forest. And behind our base camp, which you hear that the guy in charge of the base camp, he's the guy asking, hey, do you guys have radios? Yeah, and I'm out there doing the operational control. Okay, I'm going to post you north and whatnot, because the team that you have there with the video camera, they moved to where it walked in. I stayed put. And I was just sitting there like, I want to team up there. I want to team down there. Let's just kind of. And meanwhile, the camp is radioing into me going, hey, we got a lot of movement on the southwest side of the camp. And that's exactly where the thing walked off into. So, and then they found the step where it actually stepped in. They could still see dirt falling into it. And the cameraman was a big skeptic of this thing. He's like, I don't know if this thing exists or not. And he's like going, that looks fresh. So the cameraman was spooked because I had the sighting, and now he's actually looking at evidence that's showing that something just walked in there. So it was kind of a cool experience. First time I actually saw it with my naked eye. And
Okay.
that was
were you more exhilarated or were you frightened or both?
I was exhilarated. I was like, oh, there it is. Okay, now what do I do? I'm not going to move. And I'm shining light. The eyes are reflecting back at me. So it definitely had it to Pete them. They were high off the ground, about 8 foot. And they weren't quite red and they weren't quite yellow. They were kind of like an orange type of color. And they were blinking. There is it.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I could see it blinking at me. And I could see it actually turn for a second. You can see the eyes go. And then it just in it. And once I moved that light, it just casually walked off into the wood line. And it was amazing. A year later, I would see a juvenile in the same area. In the middle of the night, I went out to use a tree. And I caught it in mid-run because it must have heard me rustling, unzipping the tent. It was actually checking her. And both times, it was just checking the campsite out. We're in October, so the leaves have fallen. And the one I caught, it was just watching our campfire and listening to us all carry on with our nonsense. Because I debrief people. And after the debriefing, I went out, I tootled on out to my car very quietly while all these people are making noise. It was a perfect distraction. I didn't realize I was there until I started, and probably until I closed the door. And then it's defensive. I'm just going to stay here next to this telephone pole. And then I put my light on it, and it basically stayed there like, okay, does he see me or doesn't he? And then when I move the light, it's like, okay, time to go. And that, but in the juvenile thing, I was like, we all went to bed. I was tending out there at night. And at 1:30 in the morning, about that time, I had to use a tree. I open up the zipper to my tent, and I poke my head out, and I see a 5.5 foot one going, run right away. And my reaction to that was like, no, I just didn't see that. And then the next morning, one of the guys that was he was a researcher from Georgia, was like, something last night left a birch log behind my Jeep. I'm like, well, that's interesting, because I had a sighting of a juvenile last night. So it was,
oh, wow.
It was like, wow. And then the Ohio research team, they actually found a track that was 9 inches long, but 4 inches wide. So very wide, flat footed, but 9-inch track. So they had actually found one of the tracks they had made in that area.
I understand how you feel. I still get that way, even though I've seen spirit my whole life. It's still, really neat, especially when it's a relative. That
Right.
I love. I've seen some not so nice things myself in my day, so I understand where you're coming from there too.
And neither time did I ever feel threatened. I was kind of in amazement and awe. The second time I was like in more amazement, like, no, I couldn't have just saw it. I had to wake up like at 4 a.m. to use a tree again. That time I took my flashlight and I was like, but yeah, it was, I don't know how to explain it. It was like, wow, I was blessed. And of course, here I am 12 years later, still can't repeat it. Still haven't had another sighting, but that's the annoying thing is you have, and again, this goes back to the book a bit. You will have these characters that want attention. And a lot of the reasons why they do that is because they want to feel special or important to a community. They feel, for whatever reason, they have low self-esteem, or they have, and they just want to feel part of an organization, but not just part. Being part is not good enough. For some reason, they need to elevate themselves to feel special. So these people go out there and have Bigfoot experiences every single time they go out there. Oh, we were surrounded by 5 or 6 of them, but they come back, never have a shred of evidence, never have any proof. Or they have stuff that, look, here's my bowl of fruit. It's empty. Okay, you put a bowl of fruit on the forest floor.
Right.
What makes you think only a Bigfoot's going to eat out of that bowl?
Right. He left a receipt.
Because I'll tell you what, I got rabbits all over my backyard. Rabbits galore. I got a little baby one that's about, you can put him in the palm and he pops out. Yeah. He hides under my shed. And so last week I throw a couple of peppers out there for him. I had some peppers left over in the front. And next morning they're gone. That wasn't Bigfoot.
Right.
It was probably a bear, probably a bird, probably the baby rabbit. I almost said the baby Bigfoot, but but no, it wasn't a Bigfoot. And then the people will say, oh, look at that X, look at that tree break, look at that tree, that's Bigfoot. But they have no other secondary evidence to prove it's Bigfoot. There's no hair, there's no tracks, just it looks weird, so that's got to be Bigfoot. And you look at these, and then what happens is, what some of these people get is something called illusionary superiority, where they feel that now they're the experts and everybody else is beneath them because. I'll give you a great example. There was this one guy making all these wild claims in a chat saying, well, they do this, they do that, do this. I said, well, I'm based on what evidence? Well, I've seen them. Really? Well, I've had a couple of sightings myself, right? Mm-hmm. But I still don't know how you're making the connection. He goes, well, until you've seen 37 of them.
Oh, please. Right.
And then you're like, oh, okay, I know what's going on here. So you deal with people like that on social media, and it's like, and I find that every once in a while you'll have somebody in the you'll find people that will have, I got so many terms rolling in my head, but you'll people find people become very hypocritical. For example, if a guy tries to attempt to murder a woman, right, and he gets sent to jail, that son of a gun, he deserves it, he blah, blah, blah. We have a case where a Bigfoot researcher tried to kill probably a boyfriend. They didn't clearly state it was a boyfriend, but he was in an apartment with another male, and she tried killing him with a pistol, wrapped off a few shots. Thank God she was a bad shot. He lived. He didn't get shot. But she was convicted of attempted murder, put in jail for 4 years. And you get a comment from somebody, well, we don't know her side of the story. What's there to know? She was
Or-
convicted. She was convicted. What's there to know? You know, but if the shoe was on their foot, and perhaps if there was a guy shooting attempting to murder a girl, that same person probably would be like, hang him. Well, we don't know his side of the story, right?
Yeah,
and I always say this: if my wife murders me, that's not or kills me, that's not murder. That's justifiable homicide. Anyway.
Yeah, there's so many stereotypes out there. That's
and just to get
why I
that
was
out there, when I die, I'm donating my body to science fiction. So,
boom. That's okay. I'm a full body donor, and what they don't use goes in scrapple. So I wanted to tell you that one of the biggest reasons I was excited to have you on the show tonight is because you look for the receipts and you do your research. So I do the same thing in my field. I don't always assume everything's a ghost. I don't always assume everything's a demon. You can't, because it's not. And it's not like TV where you're always going to get an EVP. You're always going to get a picture.
Right.
You're always going to hear something. It could be a year in between hearing things. So I have to tell you, I have a lot of respect for you, sir, for all the work that you've put into this.
Yeah, it's and I don't take things at face value anymore. The older I get, the less I take. I've taken a look at a lot of our classic stories that we had that we grew up. You know, I remember hearing these stories when I was 6 or 7 years old, which is almost 50 years ago. Not quite 50 years ago, but you know, when I was maybe 6 or 7, some 45 plus years ago, I would be hearing these stories about like Albert Osman and his kidnapping story, and stories like you know, the Patterson Gimlin film, and a few others, the Falk Monster. And then you start taking a look at some of these, and some of them, you know, do hold some light. You know, you put the candle up to it and it holds its light. The Osman story, I don't believe did. And there are a few other myths that I believe they did not, just for a bunch of various reasons. And then there was things you were told that turn out that were either misconstrued or like legend. I mean, if you don't, we always talk about the Native Americans and how their legends kind of got twisted over the years. And, you know, like, well, the eagles had spirits and wolves had spirits, and, you know, it got twisted around and this and that, whatever. And what you end up doing is, you know, realizing that the same thing is happening today, just in a different fashion.
Okay, we have a question from Eternal X Wolfpack Paranormal. Have you ever put out something that they may eat in the night and captured a picture of one on camera?
So I rarely put food out for them. And the reason why is this. And again, you have to question some people's sanity when they do that. Okay, I'm out in the middle of this expert. We're going to start at a gifting bowl. Well, I don't want to gift any bears, do you?
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's not really a smart idea to put food out while you're on expedition.
Right.
You're in an area where there's a high bear count. Maybe there's, you know, cougar, depending on what, you know, where you are. Certain states, they have cougars. Not so much here in New York State. And Con will deny that there are big cats here, but every once in a while there is. You know, same thing. There's bobcat in New York. I know I got a couple in my backyard that I get in trail camera every once in a while. But they're beautiful too. And they don't bother anybody. And that's the cool thing. They don't bother anybody. They're just passing through. But, you know, I would never recommend putting like, oh, I'm going to put out a steak for them and like, okay, you're just in, you know, and I'm going to go to bed. But if I'm in an area where I am putting food out, I usually hang it on a string, 8 foot or higher. And it's usually a sugar snack, especially like a lollipop, because if the animal is actually going to take that, it may bite the stick. All right. It's going to bite the candy off the stick, leave the stick. What's on that stick?
DNA.
Oh, the DNA. Bingo.
And that is derived from how law enforcement gets DNA samples without a warrant. Right. Take that, you throw it away. Now you have your DNA on it because you've been keeping it in your mouth, your saliva. So that's how I got that idea from. I was watching a show one day and going, what kind of fruit? A lollipop. I mean, I guess you
Right.
can do
That
it with a
makes sense.
caramel apple, but they don't keep as well. You can reuse a lollipop if nothing eats it.
Right.
Put the wrapper
Right.
back on with a rubber band and sell it.
Do you have anything
Steve,
on your bucket list, as it were, for future endeavors, hunting Sasquatch, researching Sasquatch? Something you want to do, but you haven't been able to do as yet?
Well, yes, there are a bunch of things. I do want to get out and visit Bluff Creek, Willow Creek, those type of areas out there. I eventually want to get to Skinwalker Ranch too. That's kind of a neat place I've always wanted to see, just because. Nothing to do with Bigfoot, but it'd be kind of a neat place to go. Okay, I've been here.
Oh, no, I'd love to go there. I tell you
Right.
what, when you decide to go, let me carry your bags for you.
Steve, I might be able to set that up for us.
All right, that's a good deal.
I got
Good
the
deal.
man's number. Might be able to set that up for us.
Awesome.
Okay.
Right now, I'm kind of half on the DL list because in March, I got run over by a tractor trailer twice in my vehicle. And so my neck is kind of messed up right now.
Holy cow.
But we're surviving it. We're getting through it. I got my I had a little medical incident last week. I was supposed to get my first round of shots here to make that a lot better. Fortunately, I had a little bit of a medical emergency, so that's been corrected. I've been excellent though. The more the merrier, especially when it's Skinwalker Ranch.
There you go.
That way, if one or two of us disappears, there's somebody that survives and comes back to tell the tale.
Amen.
So I'm trying to get myself in shape enough to get out to the big festival is in Logan, Ohio, Hocking Hills, coming up in August. And then I got another one in September, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure, which is really neat because that's an event where we actually take people out to areas where there have been Bigfoot sightings on the Chestnut Ridge. And I got a nice FLIR video, a thermal image of a bear hanging out there once. And that's the beauty of having that tool. If you can afford it and it's in your budget, you can get one from roughly about $500 to $600 to $700. But a good thermal binocular is always helpful because you're in the woods, you're in the dark, you hear something. What is it? Right? Is it a Bigfoot? And I remember in Pennsylvania pulling that up and seeing something very tall, the heat signature of something standing there looking at me. And then all of a sudden it dropped down on all four and it kind of undulated away. That was a bear.
Okay.
If it had run away on 2 feet, then we got something completely different. But that was a bear.
Okay.
Steve, X-Men from Alaska says, would you ever think about coming to the Alaska Triangle and looking for Bigfoot? If when and where would you want to go to the Alaskan Triangle?
That's funny because I just had a good friend of mine, Alex Petikoff from he's got he has his own production company, but he does a lot of stuff for Small Town Monsters. And he was out in Alaska back in 22 and 23. He was on one of the island chains, but it was not the Portlock ones, because Portlock pretty much that Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. That Alaskan Killer Bigfoot show was just that. It was an entertainment show more than anything else. The whole reason why Portlock was abandoned wasn't because of a Bigfoot, but that's what they like to lean on. The industry dried up is what happened. But I don't know. I would have to pull out the maps again. Anytime I would never been there, but I would love to go to Alaska sometime. But again, anytime you're doing, sometimes you want to go where the sightings are hot.
Sure.
Why would I want to go to a place of sightings? A bunch of sightings happened 20 years ago and nothing's happened since. I want to go to areas where the sightings are hot. So that's up in the air.
Okay. Okay, cool. Brandy, do you have any questions for him?
They said Ken Gerber, is how you say his last name?
And Gerhardt?
Gerhardt did a show here in Alaska, him and two other guys. One was I believe an Eskimo Indian, and the other guy was a police officer like you.
That was Jax.
Jax, yes. would you bring a crew like that with you, or would you bring, your film crew and nobody that knows about the area to find the list of Bigfoot?
Contrary to popular opinion, I don't have my own film crew. I happen to have a guy, when I did that, I had a guy that was a videographer and he was coming along. I don't have that anymore. I mean, he actually moved down to the southern states years later. But who would I bring? I would bring the most capable people I could bring, I think that was, I think I would bring at least, people that can handle themselves on the ground. That would be the most important thing to do. Not worried about, we got to have a skeptic, or we got to have a scientist, or we got to have a native Aboriginal. I want the people that are going to work as a team and get out there and be competent enough out there. And that way, if I fall down, they can drag my ass out of Alaska. but yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be anything, because bottom line is this, is that if you're not a science team, if you're not all scientists and setting up experiments stuff, you're doing the same thing an investigator does right now. And we're just trying to overturn and take a look and see if things make sense.
Okay.
Well, they've already started a hashtag sponsor Alaska for you, Steve.
Awesome.
That's funny.
Hey, they want him in Alaska.
I don't mind flying. It's not my favorite mode of transportation. But, some of those places, you got to get in the little puddle jumpers to get up there. I'd be like, oh.
I got one more. I got one more question, and this is from. This is coming all the way from Denmark.
Wow! Hello.
Oh, wow! Good for you, Steve.
Denmark says they have Sasquatch, but they say it's only 4 to 5 foot tall. Is that considered a Sasquatch?
I would have to look at, what the other physical characteristics would be. And probably the number one characteristic would be their footprints. How do their footprints match up with, obviously they're going to be smaller, only being 4 or 5 feet. But how do their footprints compare to those of the American Bigfoot or Sasquatch, per se? And then we can make some kind of, if they're very flat-footed, wide heel, mid-tarsal break, we may be just looking at a pygmy variation, or a variation where they don't get very big because the food source isn't as well as it is. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to see, to break down some of those characteristics, what's seen, what's observed, how do they act, are there any footprints, what's the evidence for this, and see how it compares to evidence that's been collected, or alleged evidence that's been collected, and looking at the behavior patterns and stuff like that to ours, and make that determination. But I couldn't tell you based on height alone.
That's why I have so much respect for you. You really want to find out all the details before you give it a final answer, not just, yeah, I heard something go bump in the night, therefore it's a ghost.
Or it's a Bigfoot.
Or it's a Bigfoot. A ghost of a Bigfoot.
Literally, I've been in the woods with a guy years ago, and all of a sudden, we're standing there, and we got a bacon bait trap out because we were nearby a residence, and the person in the residence said was nearby another area that was kind of a hub of sightings, and they said, well, I have something every once in a while bang on the side of my house, and we were interviewing her, and it's like every time she didn't leave food out, something would bang on the side of, it's mad that the food is missing. All right. We're gonna do our due diligence. We're gonna hang out. So we fry up some bacon and we throw that way out in the field, see what happens. Okay. We're all sitting there quietly. We got night vision gear. And we're all set up pretty quietly. And then off in the distance, you hear, ooh, 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 ooh. It's a barred owl. The guy next to me who brought us down there that's a barred owl. It's a Bigfoot imitating a barred owl.
That's fun.
What are you talking about? It's a flipping barred owl. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So
I want to make sure your book one more time, at least tonight. You can get it on Amazon. This man is absolutely amazing. The Psychology of Bigfoot, A Guide to Understanding Bigfoot Claims by Steve Kulls. I cannot thank you enough for being here tonight.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I love talking Bigfoot.
Okay. Brandy, do you have anything?
I'm all out of questions. If anybody else has got a question, please put it in the room. Let's see here. It was a. Well, I'll put it up for you, Steve.
It was a platypus.
Yeah, there you go. It was a platypus.
That's actually, there's a running joke on my channel about a platypus. So, because the platypus, they're not very good companions. They always stick you with the bill. So,
okay.
Steve,
where are all the different locations people can find you?
So, my website is Squatchdetective.com. I have some neat things over there. There's Squatch-D University, which I kind of give some tips. I have the Hall of Shame, which is your serial hoaxers and, people of ill repute there to stay away from. And then, there's a bunch of archive sightings that I've done over the years. And SquatchDTV.com, which will go directly to our YouTube channel, or youtube.com/@SquatchDTV. That'll get you to our YouTube channel where we try to have some fun a lot of times, and we'll put out a number of videos over the course of the week.
Okay. Now, if somebody wanted you to do if somebody wanted you to do an investigation, how would they go about contacting you?
Just reach out through me at the website. There's a contact in there, or they can reach me through the Abouts thing and get my email on the YouTube channel as well. So,
sounds good. Okay.
And if you like tonight's show, please hit that subscribe button down there on the bottom. That keeps us all going in business. If you'd like to advertise or sponsor one of our shows, make sure you see Steve Kulls. Guy's got an awesome show. He's got T-shirts out. New T-shirts are out in the store, by the way. Steve, I'm giving you a plug. Steve, run with it.
Got shirts. I got shirts. I got a mug. I got the neat unofficial field team shirt out there, which is kind of a army green type of shirt with the black, the logo in black. It says field team on it. I have official team shirts, but they are only for official team members. There's some Bigfoot artwork. There's some random Bigfoot t-shirts. Like if you want a Bigfoot for President t-shirt, I got one of those out there on the site too. So yeah.
They make the shirts in 3X because I'm a big guy. I order shirts and my wife ends up wearing them.
Well, if there's something you need, you can always holler at me. I can always get you probably.
I thought you were going to say lose weight.
Yeah, you know what? I thought that too.
See? I thought he was going to say, well, lose weight and you get a shirt that fits.
Yeah, another badump bump.
Yeah. Well, I was getting, a lot of people are getting worried about me because I've dropped quite a bit of weight in the last couple of years. And, I'm getting to that weight where I'm going to start needing skis to go into the shower with so I don't get sucked down the drain.
Oh, geez. Well, I don't know what you looked like before, but you look good now.
Yeah, I'm at a disgusting weight right now.
Okay. Well,
I'm actually under 170 pounds right now.
You weigh less than me by 9 pounds. But I bet you're a lot taller.
I weigh less than your typical 6th grader.
Mm.
Now you both make me feel fat because I'm hitting that 300-pound mark. So thanks, guys.
No problem. Anytime.
Yeah, that's what I love you both for.
Steve, I'm sure you'll be just fine.
Steve, anything else you got before we close out the show? Tracy, are we done with the show? It's your show. I shouldn't even be cutting you off, but
no, we're good. We're good. I had a hugely entertaining conversation with this gentleman. So, and thank you again. And remember to tune in to my podcast, Tracey Jones PWW, every Monday and Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Sparks fly from a fingertip.